Welcome, everyone, for another episode of the Fantasy Knuckleballers. I am here today. Myself, Rich, is under the weather this week, and Justin is also unavailable. So it is me today. So with that out of the way, let's get started. Let's look at Week 7 in fantasy baseball. All right, first we'll start off with two-start pitchers. The first one I would be recommending picking up, and all these pitchers are owned in most leagues under 50%. So with that out of the way, too, the first one is Jordan Montgomery for the Yankees. He's got Tampa Bay and at Baltimore. He hasn't been quite as good as he's been in previous years. I know he just got back from Tommy John surgery last year. He hasn't been bad, but he hasn't necessarily put up elite numbers. But I believe that's going to change here as the season goes on and he gets more starts under his belts. I think this next week will be a good start for him. He's at Tampa Bay and at Baltimore. Tampa is going to be a little bit tougher for him. They have a lot of they can play a lot of matchups, but Baltimore they're not quite as good as Tampa, and I think it's just a really good two-start week for Jordan. Brady Singer, he's been a really good so far this year. He gets Detroit and the White Sox. The White Sox are not quite as good as they were. Obviously, losing Jimenez and losing Luis Robert does take a bite out of that lineup. They still have a lot of other bats in that lineup, but it's not quite the same team. And Detroit's been playing well, but I think it's a good matchup for him. And the fact that he had a start against Detroit on the 24th, where he went 7 innings, gave up 3 hits with 8 strikeouts, and given up just 1 run. And like I said, I look forward to him seeing him repeat that performance. In fact, that was the only win that he's had on the year so far. So, like I said, I think this is a good matchup for him, and like I said, go ahead and start him. Casey Mays, he's another one that hasn't had a stellar year. He's still a number 1 overall pick, and Detroit having a lot of high hopes for him. He has a couple bad starts against Oakland and Kansas City earlier in April there, but his last time out against Boston, 6 innings of 1-run baseball. He did walk 4 batters, and that's been kind of his Achilles heel so far, 2021. This is a little bit more of a shakier two-start pitcher, but like I said, I would roll the dice on him in Week 7. Luis Garcia gets the Angels and the Rangers, and he's still trying to make the transition. He's kind of a swingman between the bullpen and starting rotation. He may not get more than, I think 6 innings is more innings than you can hope for. He might stick around long enough to get that win for the team. Houston is still a pretty good team, and I think they could do enough to get the W's against the Rangers and the Angels. I do like Texas's lineup, and granted, the Angels have Ohtani, Walsh, and Trout, but if he can maneuver around them, I think he can at least get 1, if not 2, W's this week. So Luke Weaver hasn't had a great year. He did open up the year pretty well. In his last outing against the Marlins, he gave up 6 runs in 4 innings. He's been victimized by a lot of walks this year. Hasn't necessarily had that command. He does get Miami again, and looking to rebound from that 6-run loss on the 5th. He also gets Washington. He did pitch against Washington earlier this year. 4 innings, he gave up 4 runs, gave up 8 hits. On paper, it doesn't look like a great matchup, but compared to some of the other two-start pitchers, I would probably take a chance on him if you needed some innings and some strikeouts. I think he could probably provide you with that. He's probably going to give up a few runs. He's not going to go out there and blank either one of those teams. But like I said, Washington's not the same team without Juan Soto, and as long as Juan Soto continues to stay on the IL, I'd feel free to start him this week. And like I said, Miami has been kind of up and down. They're okay. They're not great offensively. I don't see them putting up 6 runs against them in Arizona. Two start pitchers to avoid. These are my note pitchers. Chase Anderson for the Phillies against Washington and Toronto. I am not a Chase Anderson fan. If playing DFS, I will stack lineups against Chase Anderson quite frequently. He's just not been good on the year. I don't think he's been good. He wasn't good last year. He has a 6.92 ERA on the year, and he's regularly getting kicked around. I think at some point they do move Chase Anderson out of the line of the rotation. I think Spencer Howard might replace him in the rotation at some point. I think it might happen sooner rather than later. So, like I said, I would avoid Chase Anderson at all cost. Jorge Lopez is another one of those players that I stack lineups against in DFS, playing the Yankees and at Red Sox. The Red Sox have been white hot, and Martinez have been crushing the ball. It's not somebody that I want to go against. He does have Lopez has a 3 ERA on the year, which isn't bad, but those are two lineups that I want to avoid. The Yankees are starting to turn it around after an early season slump. Like I said, I'm not taking Lopez this week. Jeff Hoffman. Hoffman's put together some nice games for the Reds this year, especially early in the season. He's really been a savior for a much injured team, and he does get Pittsburgh on the road, but he also gets Colorado on the road as well. He has not been pitching well recently. You might roll the dice with him at Pittsburgh, but he's going to get kicked in the head in Colorado. There is a little bit of a payback game there, so if you believe in that, you could roll the dice. But I'm just staying away from Hoffman in Colorado, and like I said, he's not pitching well as of late. So that's something I want to avoid. Mitch Keller from Pittsburgh. He has not pitched well on the season either. He has a 6.29 ERA on the year. And his last start against San Diego went pretty well. He had 5 2/3 innings, giving up no runs, 5 strikeouts. That was pretty encouraging. But overall, he hasn't played well. He gets both the games at home, which is good. Cincinnati has one of the highest rated offenses so far in the young season, but they are a little bit of a different player on the road. They do not score as many runs on the road as they do at home. They are still capable. I'm not I don't want anything to do with Mitch Keller against the Reds. And I think San Francisco is underrated as far as offense goes as well. I know their pitching staff has been really good this year, but their offense has been pretty good as well. Yaz is still out. He might return next week with any luck. But this is another player I'm staying away from. Eric Feedy gets Philly and Arizona this week. He just hasn't been very good this year. Another example of that is a 5.27 ERA on the year. In his last start against the Braves, he gives up 5 runs in 5 innings. He's had some pretty good starts prior to that here and there. He did pitch well at home against Arizona. He's only been pitching 5 or 6 innings, though. Like I said, I'm just staying away. I think Philly, Bryce Harper should be back here soon. He's been out 5 games, but I think he should be back for this start. I'm just staying away from him as a two-start pitcher. Streaming pitchers, these are, again, pitchers owned in less than 50% of leagues. Wade Miley is my first one here. Wade Miley has a 2.67 ERA. He's been really, really good this year. He's been pitching a little bit worse than he had earlier in the year, but it's only The 2 runs that he gave up against the Cubs, I don't necessarily fault him for that. He played a really good game. Same way with St. Louis. He pitched a really good game against St. Louis. He did give up 4 runs against Cleveland, but I'm all in on Miley at this point so far. After missing pretty much all of 2020, he's pitched really well this year. And he gets Pittsburgh on the road, and that's a really good matchup to begin with. So Miley's a good streaming option here. Taijuan Walker. Some of these players are owned, or if they're not owned, they're going to be owned. And if Taijuan Walker is out there in your league, snatch him up quick. He owns a 2.38 ERA on the year, and he's pitched some really good games, especially the last one. He pitched a one hitter over 7 innings against St. Louis. Gave up or had 8 strikeouts. He did the same thing. He's had similar numbers against Washington as well. But he's been really, really good this year, especially as of late. Baltimore, I like the matchup. I think it's a really good start for him, and he's somebody that you probably should be looking to add. All right, the next pitcher here is Logan Webb. He gets Texas this week on the 13th. He's been a Jekyll and Hyde pitcher so far this year. He has a 5.34 ERA, and we've talked about him quite a bit. His last start against Colorado, in Colorado, he gave up 6 runs in 3 2/3 innings. Not a great performance. He did get a quality start against San Diego on the 30th. He pitched a gem against Miami on the 25th. They have been jerking him around between the bullpen and the starting rotation. There is some sort of reason for that. I think his long-term outlook is still probably high. I do like him, especially in this start. He gets Texas at home. And the Rangers have been pretty good offensively with Garcia, Nate Lowell. I think it's a pretty good start for him. Pitching against Jordan Lyles, who's not very good. I look for the Giants to jump out to an early lead. Logan Webb should be able to hang on for the W there. So I like Logan Webb as a streaming option for this week. Patrick Corbin. He is somebody that did not like at the beginning of the season. There's been good reason why. His performance has been a good reason why I haven't liked him so far this year. He has an ERA over 8, which is not good. He's given up a lot of runs. However, with that being said, he did pitch a pretty good gem against St. Louis back on the 20th. Had a so-so start against the Mets. He pitched 7 innings of 2-run ball against the Marlins on the first in his last outing. He's going tonight against Pittsburgh. He's going tonight against the Yankees, and I'm not sure how well he'll do there, but he does get Philly next week. And I think it's somebody he's just maybe starting to put it together. Outlook, it might be somebody that you might want to target because he still has an inflated ERA and WHIP. But like I said, it's coming down, and he's made some really good starts here lately after his 9-run blow up against Arizona on the 15th. So you might be somebody you can try to pick up cheap. In fact, I'm going to probably try to put some offers out there, pick him up on the cheap side, especially in dynasty leagues. I don't think he'll be horrible the entire year. German Marquez, he's going against the Reds at home next week. He's a really good pitcher, and if he ever was traded outside of Colorado, he would be one of the top tier pitchers in the league. He's a heavy strikeout guy. His last start wasn't very encouraging on the 4th against San Francisco. Gave up 8 runs in 2/3 of an inning. That was horrible. His start before that against San Francisco, he's played a lot against San Francisco. He gave up 4 runs in 4 innings. I've mentioned earlier that the Reds are not quite the offensive juggernaut on the road as they are at home. Obviously, being in Colorado will definitely help. Marquez is a really good, high quality strikeout guy, and I like him in this matchup. I think he can probably rack up quite a number of strikeouts, even possibly get the win here. So, like I said, I like him streaming this week against the Reds. Rich was kind enough to send me his sneaky waiver picks for the week. There are a few here. The first one is Josh Rejos. He's been on the list for a few weeks now. Obviously, the ownership in him hasn't reached to the levels it should have. He's riding a 6-game hitting streak, and his average is at 240, but he's brought it up all the way from the interstate over the last couple weeks, all the way up to 240, and he's starting to hit for a little bit of power. Rich is right; he's definitely a strong candidate, and like I say, if he's not out there, if he's out there on your waiver wire, like by all means, pick him up. He's you could do a lot better. He has multi-position eligibility too, which never really hurts. Evan Longoria is another player on Rich's list. I was not an Evan Longoria fan going into the season. I liked him back in the Tampa days, but ever since he got traded to the Giants, I have not been a fan. He's 35. He's on the back end of his career. But he's one of those guys that's been playing well in this in what is a contract year for him. He's looking to hang on for another year or two and get one last contract, which he might get in the offseason, depending on how it goes. But he's been playing pretty well. He's got a 282 average with 4 home runs, 12 RBIs. He's a useful third baseman. He's been getting some quality knocks, and he's been taking some walks. Hasn't been striking out as much, but like I said, he's looking for his last contract, and with the way he's been playing, he probably will get that. Just because you might be hesitant to pick him up because of his age and a few other factors. He's playing well, go ahead and pull the trigger. Dominic Smith is the last one on Rich's list. I think examples of Rich's man crush. We all have those, and Dominic Smith is one of Rich's. He has a 233 average, and he's been kind of off and on as far as in the starting lineup. They've been setting him against some dominant lefties, but with Nemo on the DL and JD Davis on the the IL, he's been thrust into the lineup more and more, and he's actually been hitting pretty well. He's had 3 multi-hit games in the last week and gotten several RBIs. It's been a while since he's had a home run. It's been all the way back. It's almost been a full month since he's had a home run. As he plays more and more, those home runs will come. Like I said, I'm all in on Dominic Smith as well. I'm a big fan as well. Next week they play Baltimore and Tampa. He's only playing. The Mets only has 5 games next week, which I hate playing players that have only 5 games. But there's a lot of injuries this year, and obviously, like Dominic Smith, you play. Some super deep sleepers. Brad Miller is one of them. There's a lot of playing time in Philly. There's a lot of injuries. There's a lot of players not performing well offensively. And Brad Miller's been giving the team some pop in that lineup, and it's desperately needed. So I'm there with Rich too. By all means, pick up Brad Miller, play him, at least until some of those other players start coming back in the lineup. William Contreras for the Braves with Travis Leonard on the IL. Contreras has been playing, and he's not been playing bad. He's had a couple nice games. If you're in a 2-catcher league, Contreras is probably a really good pickup for you. All right, DFS starts for tonight. Team stacks that I like is Detroit against Shoemaker. Actually, I like both offensive teams in this one. Shoemaker has a 7.83 ERA against Detroit, and Skubal. I like Skubal as a pitcher long term, but on the year he's 0-4, 6.14 ERA. Hasn't been pitching well. I know Minnesota's had some injuries. I know Josh Donaldson was scratched in his last start, and I know Buxton has gotten injured in the last game. So those are potential players to start depending on their injuries. Detroit, Candelero is a good start here in this game, as well as some others in the. Like I said, I would look to potentially stack a lot of players in this game. Another game that I like to stack is the Dodgers against Griffin Canning. I know Grant Canning was one of those pitchers that we liked early in the offseason. He hasn't pitched well so far this year. 6.20 ERA. The Dodgers hasn't been hitting well lately. They haven't been playing well lately. Urias is going for the Dodgers tonight, Yeah, I think tonight they just put it all together and they just come out guns blazing and showed the Angels who the best team in LA is. Like I said, Griffin Canning hasn't been pitching well, going up against the Dodgers. And I'll tell you, two players from the Dodgers who have not been pitching or been playing well is Mookie Betts and Corey Seager. They've been getting a lot of production from lower in that lineup. Gavin Lux has been on fire, but I wouldn't be surprised myself if Mookie Betts and Corey Seager doesn't light it up tonight. So, like I said, depending on whether you need cheap plays or some more expensive plays, like I said, I like Gavin Lux a lot, and like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if Mookie Betts or Corey Seager, turns it around starting tonight. So anyhow, these are our DFS plays for the week. By all means, let us know how we're doing, whether or not you'd like to see additional content or anything differently. I appreciate your watching this show, and if you would, please hit the like buttons below. By all means, you can always reach us at MVP at fantasyknuckleballers.com, on Twitter at FKnuckleballers, or visit our website at fantasyknuckleballers.com. I thank you guys for listening this week, and hopefully you will check us out again next week when we do week 8. Thanks very much.